I believe we're live now. Um, hey Miranda, if you're still there, can you let me know if you can hear me in that chat box? I guess actually we've got probably about a 10-second lag or so, so we'll just see what happens here. So I'm just gonna wait a few more minutes while folks show up, and if you can let me know if you can hear me. I'm using headphones this time. Let's see if that works. And if you can't see the video, you may want to refresh the browser. I'm absolutely loving this Google Hangout thing. It's super fun. So let us see. Okay, now I think I've got it open in another browser here, so I should stop that so we don't get echo. Okay, I'm going to give it a few more minutes here, as it's just 12 o'clock now, and then we will start the webinar. I'm so excited to share this stuff with you. It's a personal passion of mine. Absolutely love color, and I take it for granted that you know, color theory is just something that folks know. So I'm really stoked to share this information with everyone, and I hope it's super helpful. As folks are filing in, I'd really like to welcome you all to the Color Matters webinar today, and hopefully you'll find some really useful and valuable information today about how color can impact your viewers, can increase your brand recognition, and really connect with folks on a deep emotional level. Awesome. Hey, Nicole. All right, well, I am going to get started. Let's just take a peek. Oh yeah, we've got more and more people filing in right now. So I'm going to start the webinar, and you know, if you find yourself coming in a little bit later, that's totally cool. I'm going to have a recording available of the webinar later on for folks who maybe didn't make it on time or had other things to do. Sweet. So let's get started. I really feel that color is one of the most powerful tools that you have for your website. It plays an essential part in life for everyone. So even if you're someone who has difficulty seeing color or like are colorblind, the vibrational energy that color has on you continues to have an effect on your body, your mood, your health, everything. So you know, you're aware that we need sunlight to maintain a healthy state of well-being. Well, sunlight contains all the colors that are essential to us to be healthy. So if we don't receive those colors on a daily basis, we become unbalanced and more open to illness. For example, seasonal affective disorder, which a lot of us in the Northern Hemisphere know all too well. So it's a result of, like, in the most simplistic terms, not getting enough of those colors in your life. So on your website, you can use colors to impact your users' emotions, to draw their attention and put them in the right frame of mind to convert, whether it's opting into your email list or contacting you or making a purchase. It's also one of the main factors in your customer's perception of your brand. So with an infinite number of possible color combinations out there, it can be hard to decide what colors will make the biggest impact on your website. It would be impossible to test everything, but I've picked up a few tricks about how color affects users' attitude and behaviors, and I'm going to share them with you. Today we'll cover basic color theory, psychology. We'll also talk about accessibility issues and colors' impact on conversion rates. I'll share some findings that I've found from a recent study that the folks at User Testing ran as well to find out how color can attract attention and make your website more memorable. I'm just going to go right back to our webinar screen and make sure that everything's all good. Great. The last time I presented this webinar, I didn't go back and check out the chat, and someone was saying that they couldn't see properly. So I just want to make sure that everyone can see, and I'll just keep going. So this is the first full color wheel. Give you a little bit of history here, a little history lesson. Like if you've ever taken an art class, I'm sure you're familiar with this color wheel. But here's a quick refresher. So the circle based on red, yellow, and blue is traditional in the field of art. So Isaac Newton developed the first circular diagram, and the color wheel pictured here is the first full color wheel developed by Moses Harris. But since then, scientists and artists have, studied and designed numerous variations of the concept. And so there's tons of differences of opinion on the validity of different forms of color wheels over the others. But in reality, and for your purposes here for your website, any color circle or color wheel which presents a logically arranged sequence of hues is really good enough. This is the modern color wheel. And it's this is a basic wheel. And we've got different categories of colors that are based on this color wheel. In traditional color theory, when we talk about paints and pigments, primary colors, so red, yellows, and blues again, are the three pigment colors that cannot be mixed or formed by any other combination of colors. So all other colors are basically derived from these three hues. So when we talk about secondary colors, that's like green, orange, and purple, and they're colors that are formed by mixing those primary colors of red, yellow, and blue. And then we've got tertiary colors, which is like a yellow-orange or a red-orange, a red-purple, a blue-purple, blue-green, yellow-green. These colors are all formed by mixing a primary and a secondary color. That's why the hues all have like the two word names. So let's talk a little bit about color harmony. Harmony is defined as a pleasing arrangement of parts. So whether it's like music or poetry, color, web design, or even a green smoothie, harmony is that, pleasing arrangement of parts. So in a visual experience, harmony is something that is pleasing to the eye. So it'll engage your viewer, and it creates an inner sense of order, like a balance in the visual experience. When something's not harmonious, you can tell right away. It's either boring or chaotic. So at one extreme is a visual experience that's so bland that the viewer is totally unengaged. The human brain will reject understimulating information. And then at the other extreme is a visual experience that's so overdone, it's so chaotic that the viewer can't stand to look at it. Your brain actually rejects what it can't organize and what it can't understand. So it's too chaotic and it just says, no, I'm not doing it. So extreme unity in color leads to overstimulation, and extreme complexity leads then to, sorry, I think I got that backwards. If we're talking about extreme unity, we're we're talking about understimulation, and extreme complexity leads then to overstimulation. So what you want to work with is you want to try and achieve color harmony. And how you do that is at its most basic level, you try and use complementary colors. Now these complementary colors are any two colors which are directly opposite each other on the color wheel. So right here, like red and green, these are very harmonious colors because they're directly opposite each other. And the opposing colors create a maximum contrast and maximum stability. So what they can do is they can be used to attract the user's attention and build energy. And it's like complementary color schemes they're always energizing. Versus analogous colors, these ones have lower contrast. So they are any three colors which are side by side on the color wheel. So like, for example, here we've got blue, green, green, and green, yellow. They're all analogous colors. And usually one of those three colors predominates. So these guys have lower contrast. They can be used to create a sense of harmony and continuity in your design. For example, these three colors here, they generally help users feel relaxed and peaceful. So in order to use this color scheme effectively, you have to choose one dominant color, and then a second color to support it, and then finally a third color to use it like an accent. And that'll give your web design that dramatic kind of impact that you want. I always recommend that you not use too many hues and avoid the combination of cool and warm colors, but like that's not, you know, the Bible, right? Or whatever. It's not set in stone. There's always going to be exceptions to these rules. So now that we've got some basic color theory under our belt, phew, let's talk about emotions and branding. So when you think about the Breast Cancer Society or breast cancer in general, is there a color that comes to mind? What about UPS? Global brands use color to create recognition. So there was the study at the University of Loyola. Yes, yeah, that the study found that color increases brand recognition by 80%. Now you see this stat all over the place. Proof branding uses that a lot, and basically what it says is that like companies use color to stand out and reinforce their brand attributes. So in the same way that Google or Tiffany benefit from the power of color, you can too. I fully believe that color is the most valuable tool that you've got in your branding toolbox. It creates impact. It sells, it persuades, it cajoles. So it's just one component of your brand identity system, which, by the way, that includes fonts, textures, logos, photos, images, a visual identity system. It's the packaging that surrounds your brand. So color is that part of that brand toolbox that creates the impact. For example, let's think about Apple computer. Okay, so in like the mid-90s, Apple wasn't doing so well, and you know the personal professional computing industry was quite bland and boring, but Microsoft was kind of like, you know, kicking ass because they had brought out like Windows 95. And that kind of brought more tools to people to be able to be more creative in this technical world. So Apple was totally not doing okay. And they came along and they introduced color into this marketplace where color had never been seen before. So do you remember those colorful iMacs? Yeah, Apple brought them out in 1998. And they're basically the first people to say, your computer doesn't have to be beige. And it was awesome. They totally reinvigorated their brand that had suffered, like, I think a couple $1 billion worth of losses in the years before that, just by introducing color. Do you remember those, after the iMacs came out, those clamshell iBook laptops? Yeah, I had an orange one. So color is one of the most important elements of your brand identity. Why? Because we're visual beings, and color evokes emotion and it reinforces your personality characteristics, or your brand's personality characteristics. Color impacts emotion. We react on so many levels of associations with colors: social, cultural, physical, and personal. So, for example, yellow is traditionally associated with youth, happiness, warmth, sun. Orange can be seen to evoke confidence, cheerfulness, friendliness. Red often is associated with power, passion, appetite, love, and danger. Purple can be associated with royalty, mystery, spirituality, and creativity, whereas blue would evoke feelings of trust, peace, loyalty, sometimes masculinity, and even safety. Green is said to evoke feelings of growth, ideas of money or healing. It's used a lot in the environmental industries, and it has been known to evoke feelings of envy, the whole green with envy thing. Gray is thought to be a peaceful or neutral color and evoke feelings of calm. Brown is associated with the outdoors, sometimes food, or conservatism and the earth. When we talk about the use of black, it's used to evoke feelings of formality, luxury, sophistication, and in some cultures, death. White, in some cultures, is also associated with death. In other cultures, it's associated with purity, simplicity, goodness, and freshness. So I want you to keep in mind that these color associations, they vary from culture to culture and from person to person. You know, like men and women have different color preferences. You know, colors that are on vogue this year might be more effective with a younger audience, or maybe even a higher income audience. So, you know, socioeconomic status, culture, geography, gender, all these things have different impacts on how we view and how we perceive color. So your customers will definitely form color associations for certain industries. For example, blue is a lot of times seen to be associated with tech, like tech industries. Green is health, red, fast food. And while some companies choose to match customer expectations by using their industry's common colors, others have found that going against the grain can be a very effective way to make an impression. Take a few minutes to look at this chart here, and I'm going to have a glass of water. So as you can see in the chart, many popular companies have used color to evoke a particular emotion in their customers. So if we're talking about like blue representing reliability, this is a good thing for travel companies. But there's really no hard and fast rule that all travel sites have to be blue. Think about, for example, Virgin America. They like super chose to go against the grain with the design on their site, and all throughout their brand they've used reds and purples. So this is definitely not what users would expect from an airline, but it certainly stands out. So choosing unexpected colors can be an effective way to add delight to the experience and to make users remember your company. So bottom line is, think about your customer. Think about your ideal customer and your target market, and think about how traditional they are. How would they react to a change from the norm? Would it be delightful or disorienting for them? This is really key. You want to be able to use colors in your brand that speak to your clients. So knowing your client is super important. What message would your company be sending them if your color scheme broke away from traditional expectations? Would they like super enjoy it and be drawn toward it? Or would it be really, really off-putting for them and unsettling? Color can be extremely powerful, especially on the web where you need to convey your brand without the benefit of being there in person. So that's why it's important for you to develop a strategy for using color on all your communications and then apply it consistently. So you'll be way more memorable and you'll stand out from others who do what you do if you use your color strategy consistently. Listen to your customers, know your target market, and then be consistent. When I say apply color to all your communications, I really suggest you select 1 to 3 colors and use them consistently. Resist the temptation to use all 64 colors in a box of Crayola crayons. I know that Google has done a great job of building their brand on those 4 colors of like red, blue, yellow, and green, but they likely have a much larger marketing budget than any of us. So let's talk about accessibility. How does your site appear to you and to your users who have visual impairments? Consider this image. When you're using colors in text, it's important to be aware that placing 2 colors with a low value contrast next to each other can make your copy extremely difficult to read. It doesn't matter if they're complementary or analogous colors. It's the contrast value that's really important here. So while low contrast text is beautiful and harmonious, higher contrast text is much more usable. This is especially true on mobile screens, where most of your users are more likely to be outdoors or in bright places that cause screen glare. So this is also this is something where you can use your analytics to find out where most of your people are viewing your website on. If they're viewing it on mobile, you know that you need to make sure that you are using a much higher contrast colors. As far as color blindness, there's approximately 8% of men and 0.5% of women who are affected by it. And while there's many different forms of color blindness, red-green color blindness is the most common. And so folks with the red-green color deficiency have trouble distinguishing reds, greens, and yellows of similar values, especially when, like in this image here, the greens have more yellow than blue in them. So what does this mean? If you're using colors with low value contrast, be aware that users who have color blindness may not be able to make out the words or the images at all. This is especially a problem around the winter holidays. We just saw past in last month, the websites are totally decked out in red and green. And if your target market is men, you got to realize that 8% of your visitors can't see the words on the button telling them to buy now. And you're probably missing out on a few conversions. So if you're in a situation where you have to use a color combination that would be difficult for people with vision impairments, you can improve accessibility by increasing the value contrast between the colors. Speaking of conversions, let's dig into it. So what colors are really going to improve your conversion rates and boost your bottom line? And how can you use what you've just learned about color theory and psychology and branding to get people to click on that button? So for every conversion rate optimization out there who claims that a bold, eye-catching red is the best color for a button, there's another one who says that green is the best because green means go. And there's tons of A/B test results that show how a change in the color of your call to action button can make a drastic impact on signups. And this image here is from a famous test from HubSpot where they shared their results from back, it was a while ago when they were known as Performable. What they did is they created 2 sales pages that were identical except for the button color. One page had a green call to action button and the other had a red call to action button. So even though they originally predicted that the green button would perform better, the red button actually resulted in 21% more clicks. Why? So what they were saying is that even though this test result, is what they got, they want to make sure that people don't run out and change all their buttons to red. Because there's tons of different factors. Okay, so it's possible that their audience simply prefers red, even though other audiences might prefer green. But what I think is more likely is that this red button got more attention because it was one of the only red objects on the page. So if you take a look at the page with the green button, there's green all over that page. So even though the button is bigger, it doesn't stand out as much. Whereas the red button is practically one of the only red colors on that page. And so it kind of pops out a little bit more. So the unfortunate news is that there's not one magical color that consistently performs best for all websites. But the good news is that there are some simple tools that can help you use color to your advantage. Here's the thing, contrast is key. So I'm probably sounding like a broken record and I've said it a few times already, but contrast is key. If you want your users to click something, you gotta make it stand out. So for example, your site uses a lot of orange, users probably won't notice an orange button right away, no matter how well orange buttons performed in someone else's A/B split test. So contrast isn't about, it's not just about complementary colors on the color wheel, it's about value too. And a light button is not going to stand out against a light background as much as a dark button would. On top of that, your copy needs to stand out against the button as well. And the other thing that's really important to note is that bright is memorable. HubSpot also did another study where they asked users to, they showed users a bunch of different websites, and they asked the users to tell them which of those websites that they visited was most memorable. And over 50% of them chose the bright website as the most memorable. So yeah, so your number one thing is that make sure that you have lots of contrast and that you've got some bright components to that color. But above all, you really want to listen to your users. We can talk about color-related issues that can affect your user experience on your site all day long. We can talk about color theory, traditional color psychology, brand recognition, and accessibility. And these factors are a really, really good place to start when you're creating a new design or rebranding. But ultimately, the right decision is always the one that your users think is right. Because we're not designing websites for ourselves. We're designing websites for our users. And if we want to connect and convert those right people, you really have to design for them. And that's why it's so important to get feedback from your target market early in the design process. Find out if your color choices are impacting your users in the way that you would expect those colors to impact them. Bottom line, know your market, ask them questions and really listen to their answers, and then test frequently, rinse, and repeat. It's a cycle, and you constantly have to be refining that, listening to your market, getting to know them, asking them questions, and then testing. I've got a handful of questions that you can ask your users when you're testing out color choices, or any design decision really, for that matter. You could ask people, before visiting my website, what would you expect from a company that does life coaching, copywriting, and insert whatever your company does. What do you expect to be able to do? How do you expect the website to look? What's the first thing you would click or tap? What are 3 words that you would use to describe my website? On a scale of 1, very unpleasant, to 5, very pleasant, how did the website make you feel? How likely or unlikely would you be to trust my company? How did this website compare to your expectations? Can you think of any other companies that have very similar offerings? How would you compare this company to them? So you can ask these questions in a survey. You can, send out emails. You can, do focus groups, or you can also use a testing tool. There's tons of website testing tools out there. One of my favorite is a free tool called Peek. It's peek.usertesting.com. I'll provide the links for you after the webinar, but it's great. They actually have people who will go and screen record and visit your site, and then they'll talk all about your site, and it's really good. It's valuable. That free tool, you can't select your target market, but I think they've also got paid tools at usertesting.com where you can get really granular on your target market and whatnot. So we have learned all about color today. And you know what? It's just one of the powerful tools that you can use to connect with amazing folks online. If you want to learn all the tools you can use to connect them into raving fans and loyal customers, I got something for you. What if you had a professional web designer feeding you her best tools and practices? How would it feel if you had a WordPress expert at your fingertips, guiding you gently along the way as you build your website, demystifying all the confusing bits and showing you the right tools you need? What if you were finally able to build a web presence of your dreams and be proud? When all the sales come in, you can smile and proclaim out loud, I did this. How would it feel if I could remove all the scary unknowns and give you a clear path, a guided course on all the steps you need to take to make your website dreams come true? And what if this costs less than working with a web designer for 4 hours? In 6 weeks or less, you'll take that spark of an idea, that passion in your heart, and transform it into a fabulous online presence that connects and converts your perfect client. To hire a web designer, you're going to pay a minimum of $2,000 just to get a basic website up. A high converting website will cost you up to $10,000 if you work with a freelancer, and $20,000 or more if you work with an agency. If you're brave enough to go it alone, like I know a lot of you are, a premium theme is going to cost you around $80 and countless hours of researching online, scouring help files, support forums, blog posts, and webinars, and you still may not feel 100% confident that you got it right. How much is your time worth? I know the thought of building your own website can seem super scary, but it doesn't have to be. As a web designer with a helpful blog, I get lots of questions from brave entrepreneurs like you who are building or who have built their own websites. What widgets will actually help me get clients? Where should I place my opt-ins? What's a header? What the heck is above the fold, and why is it so important? What's the biggest mistake I could make building my own website, and how do I avoid it? These are all real questions that people have struggled with when building their own websites from scratch. And they've reached out to me in anxiety, wishing they knew the answers. I feel called to be of more service than just to my signature web design clients. I've always wanted to help folks who reach out via email on a regular basis, but I wasn't sure how to do that in a way that I could also stay in business. I started the blog with website tips and tricks, and I soon realized it's just not enough. I really, really want to help more. So I've put together a 6-week course to help brilliant people like you navigate the confusing waters of building your own online presence. I put an end to all the searching for answers and show you a clear, simple, and dare I say easy path to take while building your wildly successful online presence. You can learn all the tools that you need to connect with amazing folks online and convert them into raving fans and loyal customers in 6 weeks. And it's simple. You can join me on this adventure, and I promise you'll never feel like you're on a back road without a map or a clue. So in 6 weeks, what we'll do is we'll start with basics. In your pre-work, we'll talk about hosting and domain names and professional email accounts and why they're so important. I'll teach you how to install WordPress, how to log in. I'll teach you all about the dashboard and my little tips and tricks that I like to use. I'll go over all of the settings and your media library. In the next week, we'll get a bit more cozy and we'll talk about posts and pages and how to create pages and posts that actually convert and how to format your pages in a way that folks' eyes naturally read them. In the next week, we make it all yours. We get clear on your website goals, which is so, so very important when you're developing a website. I demystify WordPress themes, and I also will walk you through installing a website whip optimized theme. I've got 3 custom themes that I've designed that are goals-based themes. I'll teach you how to customize your theme. We'll go for color theory, and you'll get my theme toolbox. In the next week, we make it work for you. This is where we talk about navigation and user experience. I go over WordPress menus, and then I also explain plugins and widgets and which ones will actually work for you and which ones are just a waste of time. And I give you a list of my top 10 plugins that I think every website that's using WordPress needs. In week 6, which is the final week, we're moving on up. We talk about maintenance, security tools, how to manage users, my favorite backup tools and practices, and the managing comments and preventing spam, because we need to keep our websites healthy. And then I've got a bonus week as well, where I give you a lot more tools on how to optimize your website for more traffic. We talk about titles and permalinks, optimizing photos, keywords, and traffic sources. Now, I am offering this, I'm opening it up today just to Color Matters webinar participants, and the price for the website whip is $297, but I'm offering a 20% discount. There's a coupon code called iHeartColor, and if you visit websitewhip.com and you decide to purchase the 6-week program, enter the iHeartColor promo code and the little coupon box for a 20% discount. So thank you all for joining me today. I want to open up the call for any questions. So if you can paste any questions you've got in the chat box, I'll try to get to them all. Oh, and I promised you that I'd give you links to resources that I referenced earlier in the webinar. So I have a slide here where I can give them all to you. And I also package up the entire presentation and have it available. There it is. And have it available for you after the webinar. So these are some of the resources that I used. Design Love Fest is where I got some of those really pretty graphics. Peak.usertesting.com, that's that free testing tool that I talked about. And Proof Branding as well is another great website for lots of awesome branding resources. You've got HubSpot and Buffer Apps, user testing and color testing results there as well. And I'm looking at the questions coming in. I see, hey, Nicole, you noticed a restaurant decked out in red and green yesterday. That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so red and green doesn't have to be specifically Christmas colors. I think Christmas usurped red and green, but I think they are really great as complementary colors, and we can use kind of all sorts of different variations of red and green, as long as they're, you know, right across from each other on the color wheel, to add that impact and that contrast. Um, and does anyone have any other questions? Just looking through the chat here. I want to thank you all for coming out today and being a part of my webinar. I hope that you learned a little. Oh, there's me. I hope that you learned a little bit and that these color resources are useful for you. Maybe I will stop screen sharing and you can see my face. Hi, people. Yeah, so if you have any other questions that I didn't get to in the chat, feel free to email me. Just shoot me an email. It's hello@jamielee.com, and I'd love to be of service and answer any questions that you've got about color, color theory, color psychology, and how you can use that to create a bigger impact and connect with your right people. Just take a look at the chat. If there are no other questions, sometimes I feel like I need to refresh the chat. Yeah, so if there are no other questions, I'm going to sign off and say goodbye. So thank you all for coming out. I had a blast. I hope you did too.